Welcome to the Mouse Hole, everyone, with me OnAnyMouse, and today we are going to look at the skill trees within Starfield. We're going to figure out how they work. We're going to see how you progress, both within the trees and within each skill. And at the end of it all, we're going to find out exactly how many levels you need to be able to complete all of the skill trees in the game. The first thing we can see is that we have 4 tiers of skills: the grey novice tier, the green advanced tier, purple expert tier, and the gold master tier, where we can expect to find some extra valuable and extra powerful skills. Looking at the individual skills, we can identify what level of skill we're at by the colour of the actual thumbnail of the skill itself and the border which it has. So rank 1, we have a fairly poorly defined image with a grey border. Rank 2, we have a thicker border and a more defined image. Rank 3 gives us the first gold border and a far better defined image, and rank 4, the master level, gives us a thickened gold border with the image actually breaking through that border. And this becomes important when we start to look at the way that we advance the skills from one rank to the next. To advance from one tier to another, we need to spend a certain number of points in the previous tiers. So for example, from tier 1 to tier 2, we can see here 2 points have been spent, another 2 need to be spent to give us a total of 4 before we can start spending points in tier 2. Looking on to tier 3, things get a little more complex. At this stage we can see that there have been 3 points spent in tier 1, none in tier 2, and we need another 7 for a total of 10 to get into tier 3, whereas there are only 9 previous skills. So it seems that things become a little more onerous as we progress through the skills. Looking at the individual trees then, first we have the physical tree, and we see here that we have 5 tier 1 skills, 5 tier 2, 3 tier 3 and 3 tier 4 skills, giving us a total of 16 skills within the physical tree and a total of 64 points that can be spent within that tree to maximize it. Having a little bit more of a look at the skills themselves, there are certain skills that we know. Stealth gives us the ability to carry out sneak attacks. Weightlifting adds to our carry capacity, and if the Fallout games are anything to go by, this will be a really key skill to be able to progress in the game, at least in the early stages. Wellness gives us a total health points, and as we progress through that, the health points will increase, and I suspect when we get to level 4 we may actually find that the rate at which those points regenerate also increases. Tier 2 we know nothing about at the moment, but we'll come back to that in a second. Tier 3 we know 2 of the skills: decontamination, which will increase your chance to recover from contamination and or infections, and martial arts, which, as the name might suggest, relates to unarmed attacks. In the top tier skills within the physical tree, we have concealment, which presumably will play into the stealth role as well. We have neurostrikes, which, as one of the devs pointed out within the deep dive, adds to the effectiveness of melee skills, in particular punching strikes. When we come to the 9 skills about which we don't have any detail, we can have a little bit of a guess from the icons at what these might be. So going back to tier 1, the first suggests it's something to do with melee skills. These lists are all alphabetical left to right, and so we know that it comes before the S of stealth, so melee would be a reasonable assumption for the first of the icons. The second seems to be something to do with speed or perhaps endurance, and This presumably will give us better sprint speed of our character when moving by foot. Coming to tier 2, the first symbol seems to be something relating to energy resistance, followed immediately by environmental resistance of some form. The third icon is a little bit of a more vague one, but I think it's something like flexibility, relating perhaps to the agility that was part of Fallout 76. Fourth skill in tier 2 seems to be something to do with the ability to increase our productivity when we're crafting. If you're a craftaholic like me, this is something we'll be going for. It may or may not relate directly to crafting of food items, or it may be crafting in general. And the fourth seems to be to do with some sort of relaxation, stability, call it Zen, call it what you will, which relates, funnily enough, to the first of these skills on tier 3, which with the yoga pose seems to be something to do with calmness, perhaps ability to actually restore our endurance when we've been in melee combat. And the last on tier 4 would suggest that it's something to do with resuscitation, perhaps being able to be auto-resuscitated ourselves, or if, and this is a big if, we'll come back to later, if there is any element of being in servers with other players, which I don't think is necessarily going to be the case, like Fallout 76, perhaps if that is the case, we may have the ability to resuscitate either other players or perhaps some of our allies within the game. Moving on to the second of our trees, this is the social tree, and once again we have 5 tier 1, 5 tier 2, 3 tier 3 and 3 tier 4 skills for a total of 16 skills and 64 skill points. And when we come to look at what those skills actually are, this time we know the vast majority of the skills. So in tier 1 we have commerce, which suggests something to do with improved trading capacity or abilities and perhaps construction options. Gastronomy, which clearly relates to crafting of food items. Persuasion, which will be a powerful skill for the voice dialogues, which we have as a regular part of the feature with other characters within the game. Scavenging, which seems to relate to the scrapper skill within Fallout 76 and being able to get more items from the chests and from bodies and things like that that we loot. And theft, which clearly some people love, which may or may not involve actually putting things in people's inventories as well as taking things from them. In tier 2 we have bargaining, which would seem to give us potentially better buying prices and selling prices in items that we want to buy and sell. Diplomacy, which we've already had a description of within the game, enabling us to get better results from some of our conversations with people. Intimidation, which is one of the skills we've got the full description of and you've seen already. And moving to tier 3, instigation. Instigation is the ability to actually get NPCs to attack a target as we get more powerful skills. Leadership, which lets our companions gain affinity to us faster and presumably therefore develop their skills. And outpost management, which there are some opinions about what this may be, but there are a couple of outpost skills and exactly what that means is not really clear yet. And the last of the skills that we have the details for so far is xenosociology, which, as is explained in the deep dive, relates to the ability to actually direct and, or as was suggested, mind control some of the fauna within the game. Moving on to the skills that we don't yet know the details of, we can make some educated guesses. In tier 2, the fourth icon, there's been a suggestion that this is to do with the ability to generate solo XP in exactly the same way as we have within Fallout 76. But again, if this is a fully solo game, does this relate to whether we have one of our companions with us or not? I'm not quite sure how that happens, so this one may or may not be accurate. The fifth one seems to be something to do with finance, whether that be philanthropy or again something that affects our buy and sell prices, or perhaps it's something else. Maybe it's to do with the business aspects of the game rather than some of the personal ones. And tier 4, the first icon relates to brain power in some capacity, so perhaps cognitive skills and the various aspects of our ability to influence others. The second is a little bit vague. It seems to me, because of this robot icon that's there, to be something to do with automation. Moving on to the third of the skill trees, we come to combat, which has 5 tier 1, 5 tier 2, 4 tier 3 and 3 tier 4 for a total of 17 skills and 68 skill points to be spent. And looking at those skills, this time we have information on the majority of skills once more. So we have ballistics, which increases ballistic weapons damage, dueling that increases melee weapon damage, lasers, as you would expect, increasing laser weapon damage, pistol certification doing more damage with pistols, and shotgun certification doing the same with shotguns. Demolitions will give us more explosive damage, with heavy weapons doing the same with heavy weapons, presumably. Particle beams is an interesting one. We don't really know a lot about that yet, but rifle certification would seem to be the same as the other types of guns. We then have marksmanship, which increases our ability to make critical hits. Rapid reloading, which kind of speaks for itself and increases both reload speed and apparently has an element of luck attached to it. Sniper training, which, as you might expect, reduces stability and sway on the rifle barrel, and targeting, which increases accuracy and range. Looking at the ones that we don't really know much about, in the middle of tier 2 we have a symbol that could mean just about anything. I suspect it has something to do perhaps with navigation, but is that a combat skill? I don't know. It's really not clear what that skill represents. And on tier 4 we have something to do in the first icon of something relating to armor, perhaps armor penetration or armor efficiency. The second thumbnail suggests something to do with the targeting of limbs, like the VATS system is able to do within Fallout. And the third would appear to be something to do with scoped weapons, whether that is scope accuracy, scope efficiency, something like that. The one other thing to say about the combat tree is that particle beams, which was in tier 2, has now been moved into tier 3. So the numbers I told you a second ago have changed a little bit, but that wasn't represented within the images, so I've left it as is for the total count because it doesn't make a huge change to the outcome. Moving on to the fourth skill tree, the science tree, we go back to the 5 tier 1, 5 tier 2, 3 tier 3 and 3 tier 4 as before, for once again a total of 16 skills and 64 points. And when we look at what those skills actually are, once again we have a limited amount of information within the science tree. On tier 1 we have astrodynamics, which will improve our grav dump range. Geology we don't know an awful lot about yet, but presumably that's to do with mining and identifying rocks and things like that. Medicine ought to be fairly self-explanatory and is to do with our ability to heal, presumably ourselves and others. And surveying increases the rewards that we get from scanning planets, moons, and presumably also the flora and fauna that go around the map. Botany is the first of the items we have on, and the only one we have on tier 2, and that relates to the plant life that's on the planet. Astrophysics on tier 3 is improved information on planetary scans with bonuses from those and the ability to turn up extra information. Chemistry will allow us to create extra chems at the research lab, and outpost engineering, much like the previous skill, outpost management, we don't really know an awful lot about, but clearly those two are related to what and how much and what level of things we can build within our outpost, which I suspect will work very, very similarly to how the camp system worked within Fallout. Coming to those skills we don't really know an awful lot about yet. The fourth skill on tier 1 seems to be something to do with either planning or design, and perhaps increases the efficiency of our research as we go through that aspect of development of the game. On tier 2, the second of the icons suggests something very much to do with scanner range or scanner efficiency. And the third thumbnail clearly indicates something to do with space suits, perhaps their endurance or their efficiency. The fourth, I think, is really interesting. It seems to be to do with weapon upgrades and our ability, as was mentioned in the deep dive, to make lots and lots of changes. As we know, that's something that's very much a part of the existing Bethesda games, and this would seem to be where we access some of the more valuable upgrades that can be made to our weapons. And the very last, we don't have a name for, but it would seem that it is the animal equivalent of the botany skill, and so I'm suggesting that one maybe be called zoology. On the gold tier, tier 4, the first of the icons seems to be something to do with a space station, and so I'm going to suggest it's something to do with our ability to remotely manage the locations that we have, whatever that is going to be called. Clearly that's not going to be the name itself because it's at the beginning of the alphabet. The second would appear to be something to do with discovery and scanning on the planets, which would fit with the science theme, although how that works we have no idea. And the third, who knows, I'm having a wild guess at something to do with the faction system and our ability to influence those factions through affinity or by other mechanisms. We then come to the last of the skill trees, the tech tree, and with a slightly different arrangement from the others, we now have 5 tier 1, 4 tier 4, 5 tier 3, and 3 tier 4 skills, 17 total again, for another total of 68 points. And when we look at the actual skills within the tech tree, we actually know quite a lot about these. And looking at the individual skills that we have ballistic weapon systems appears to relate to our ability to use those systems within our ship. Boost pack training, which we know a little bit about and will be much like the jetpacks in Fallout. Piloting skills, this in large terms seems to be mostly about ship related skills. However, security is something that is maybe relevant to ships as well, but we've already seen that this relates to our ability to hack into systems and open doors. And targeting control, which we've seen relates to the ability to target subsystems when we are attacking other ships. Payloads is the only one we know for sure on tier 2, and that relates to our ability to maximize cargo space within our ship, which I suspect will be something that we really need to manage carefully, especially as we get on within the game. And in tier 3 we have the names of all of the skills there: missile weapon systems, particle beam weapon systems, both of which fairly self-explanatory. Robotics gives us expertise in robots and turrets, presumably both on our ship and on the ground, with those doing more damage as we level up the skill. And the last two are really interesting: starship design and starship engineering. The first, I would imagine, allows us to make items to put onto our ship, and the second perhaps to apply different types of levels of upgrade to our ships throughout the game. Coming to the skills that we don't know within the tech tree, the first on tier 2 would seem to be to do with energy or laser weapon systems. The second is clearly something to do with engines, perhaps engine management or engine output, power output. And the last is clearly something to do with our management of shields within our ship, presumably giving us stronger and faster regenerating shields. Coming to the gold tier 4, these are a little bit speculative. The first would seem to be something to do with the efficiency of our weapon systems in general, perhaps aim efficiency. Second is clearly something to do with boost pack or boost pack propulsion. And the last I'm going to make a wild guess at being something to do with something akin to an EMP. So putting all that together, we have 25 tier 1 skills, 23 tier 2, 19 tier 3 and 15 tier 4 for a total of 82 skill, which will take a grand total of 328 skill points to be able to master. Or will it? Because if we remember back to character creation, we actually gain some introduction to the skill tree through our choice of traits, and we may get up to 3 starting skills with our traits. There is some crossover and duplication within them, so I would expect that most people will have somewhere around 6, 7, 8 or maybe even 9 starting skill points just from the traits that they get. And of course there may be some things throughout the game which actually give us bonus skill points as we go through. So I fully expect that to maximize the tree we'll be looking at somewhere approximating a total of level 320 before we get our skill tree maximized. I hope you found that helpful. I hope I'm somewhere near to the target in terms of the skills that I've had a bit of a guess at. If you'd like this video, we'll be producing much more Starfield content when the launch comes in just a couple of weeks now. I really hope you did, and I really hope that you subscribe to the channel, that you like the video, and if you've got any other suggestions as to what some of these icons could be, let me know in the comments below. Did I get them right, or do you think I got them wrong? I'll see you then. In the meantime, this has been OnAnyMouse in the mouse hole, and I'm counting the days now to when Starfield launches. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.